Hello, everyone. Here we are again talking about the Caribbean. In the second half of this series, I'm using a book by Olwyn Blouet called The Contemporary Caribbean Life, History, and Culture since 1945. And so today we're going to come near the end of our series talking about Caribbean culture. So let us begin. Caribbean culture. Caribbean culture is alive and kicking, according to Professor Blouet, combining African, Asian, and European themes in creative melange. Many commentators emphasize the creolized or the transculturated nature of styles that bring diverse ingredients into the Caribbean stew or callaloo. This word transculturated comes from Fernando Ortiz in Cuba, and it's a contrast to acculturated, which is a one-way acquisition of culture by an individual, whereas transculture or transculturation is a two-way flow of culture between two different cultures in which a third overlapping culture is created. You can see this with Cuban music, for example, with European classical music and instruments and African rhythms combining to form danzon, son, and salsa. Since the end of World War II, there's been an explosion of cultural creativity in music and entertainment. There's been carnival, calypso, reggae, steel bands, all known globally, plus many exciting new musical styles. So this is a picture, I believe, of Carnival in Trinidad. I'm having trouble changing my screens here. So, as an introduction, island authors have written poetry, essays, novels of world-class standards. There are Nobel Prize winners for literature in the Caribbean, such as Derek Walcott of St. Lucia and V.S. Naipaul of Trinidad. Literary subject matter addresses many themes, from anti-colonialism, which is a very dominant theme, to a history of bondage and the struggle for freedom, to nationalism, immigration, diaspora, exile, and return. Local Creole dialects are used proudly as authentic dialogue, expressing real-life experiences of Caribbean people. Recent literature underlines the Creole nature of the Caribbean identity with its richness, variety, and informality. Fusion, a blending of multicultural elements and styles, describes the Caribbean culture. There's a picture of Naipaul on the left and Derek Walcott on the right. The Trinidad Carnival, lasting over a month at the capital city of Port of Spain, is the best known annual contemporary event in the Caribbean. The Caribbean was originally associated with the period before Lent. Carnival is a time of revelry, parade, music, dance, parties, and playing masquerade. The celebration ends on Mardi Gras, or Fat Tuesday, and was traditionally followed by the period of fasting. Rum is central to Carnival and intrinsic to the Caribbean popular culture. In the United States, we have Mardi Gras in New Orleans, which of course comes from its French heritage, which is also Catholic. Carnival and Jonkonu. Barbadians enjoy crop over as one of their festivals. Jamaicans celebrate Jonkonu. Carnivals have become popular outside the region, being carried to London by Caribbean immigrants. A traditional carnival experience is found in Rio de Janeiro. Mardi Gras is also celebrated in New Orleans. Many calypso artists, including the Mighty Sparrow, are famous inside and outside of the Caribbean for lyrics, humor, wit, and imagination. The Mighty Sparrow has over 70 albums to his name. And there's a picture of the Mighty Sparrow in the lower left, plus some pictures from Jonkonu, I think, and calypso. Bob Marley, one of my heroes. Reggae is a Caribbean music genre associated with the singer Bob Marley in Jamaica. Bob Marley lived from 1945 to 1981. He was born in a poor black neighborhood area of Kingston, Jamaica. Reggae is noted for its sharp social and political commentary. This is a picture of Bob Marley with his guitar. He died tragically young of cancer. In the political tensions of the 1970s, Marley played before Michael Manley, who was the Jamaican Prime Minister, at the One Love Peace concert in Jamaica. He was awarded a UN Peace Medal. Bob Marley was the first superstar from the Third World, a notable accomplishment. His reggae music lives on in Africa as well as the Caribbean. Music and dance are identified with particular islands, and all share an Afro-Caribbean element. Cuba has danzon and son. Jamaica has reggae. Calypso is linked to Trinidad. Artists in Martinique and Guadeloupe developed zouk. This is a picture of zouk dancing. Very romantic. In the early 20th century, Anglo-Caribbean writers have established salons as vehicles to express Caribbean literature. H.D. de Lassay, the editor of The Gleaner, the main newspaper in Jamaica, published The Planter's Punch, arrived annually starting in 1920. Esther Chapman began the West India Review in 1934. In Trinidad, the Beacon Group, associated with Alfred Mendez, CLR James, and Albert Gomez, produced literary journals incorporating the Creole dialect in poetry and stories. There was a conscious effort to connect with popular themes and forms of speaking. A book like that I read recently was The Wine of Astonishment by Earl Lovelace, set in Trinidad, which dealt with the persecution of the spiritual Baptists. CLR James, one of my favorite authors. He wrote Mente Ali in 1936, and he later became famous for writing the definitive history of the Haitian Revolution, the Black Jacobins, in 1938. His full name is Cyril Lionel Robert James, but he goes by CLR James. He was a Marxist intellectual from Trinidad, anti-colonial. He started as a cricket journalist. James's works and ideas influenced the Black Power movement in the United States. I highly recommend his book on the Haitian Revolution. Another famous writer who made her mark with the wide Sargasso Sea in 1966 is Jean Rice from Dominica. Or it might be pronounced Jean Rice. Because we're in the Caribbean, I never quite know whether to use the French pronunciation or not. Barbadian writers include George Lamming, who wrote The Castle of My Skin, and Camus Braithwaite. Female writers included Jamaica Kincaid of Antigua, Merle Hodge of Trinidad, and Erna Broadbear of Jamaica. In French Caribbean literature, we have, I'm trying to find a spot to put myself. I'll put myself right there. In French Caribbean literature, we have several prominent Haitian writers, such as Jacques Stéphane Alexis, who wrote Comrade General Sun in 1937, dealing with the massacre of Haitians by Trujillo. A writer from Martinique who's associated with the anti-colonialism and the negritude movement is Aimé Césaire. He also was the teacher of Frantz Fanon, another famous anti-colonialist. One of César's best-known writings is called A Discourse on Colonialism. It's not very long, and it's well worth the read. It's doing it again. In the Hispanic Caribbean, we have a number of well-known writers from Cuba, including Jose Marti, Fernando Ortiz, and Alejo Carpentier. Alejo Carpentier was a novelist and a musicologist who influenced the French Surrealism movement. He was influenced by French Surrealism before he developed his own theory of marvelous realism, which was a forerunner of magical realism. Luis Muñoz Marin was also a poet as well as a politician in Puerto Rico. We're only touching the surface here. There's many other writers that we could mention. In the area of religion, which is an important part of culture, most religions in the Caribbean have a Christian and or an African foundation, but have been modified to produce new creations. There are Catholics in the Spanish islands. The Roman Catholic Church was predominant for the first century and a half or two. Then later in the British West Indies, the Anglicans became very predominant. That is the Church of England. In the colonial era, I'm going to be teaching a class this spring, 2022, on Christianity in the Caribbean. So I've been reading up about all of these, and the Church of England was particularly complicated and difficult when it came to slavery and race relations. British nonconformist sects such as the Quakers began to arriving in the British Islands in the 17th century. In the early 19th century or the late 18th, there were other Protestant groups such as the Methodists, the Moravians, the Baptists, who began to grow and flourish. They, unlike the Church of England, they made a specific effort to reach out to people of color, mulattoes, blacks, even slaves, and that proved unpopular with the Church of England and with the English aristocracy, but it fueled their rapid growth. They established missions and schools in the English islands. The Spiritual Baptists are a unique group in Trinidad. They have strong influence theologically from the Baptists and from the United States, and they worship Jesus, and they're Trinitarian in their faith, but they also have vestiges of African religious vestiges. They honor and revere the Orishas using the Catholic saint names, and so they're an interesting combination. They're a small group in Trinidad, and up until the late 1950s, they were pretty severely persecuted in Trinidad. The Spiritual Baptists are an Afro-Caribbean blended religion based in Trinidad. There are other Afro-Caribbean religions that are very predominant. Santeria is a Neo-African religion developed in Cuba and diffused to the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and Miami. Vodou is evolved in the slave society of Haiti, and it combines West African and Roman Catholic ideas, symbols, and rituals. The power of spirits and Catholic saints are believed to impact every part of life. The power of the spirits. Trance and spirit possession are an important part of voodoo ceremonies. Rastafarianism originated in Jamaica. It involves the veneration of the Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie, who was considered to be, at least by the Rastafarians and Ethiopians, he was considered to be a descendant of King David and the Queen of Sheba. The pro-African ideas of Marcus Garvey laid the foundations for Rastafarianism. Rastafarianism is associated with reggae music. Bob Marley was a Rastafarian, and it's also associated with the ritual smoking of ganja, otherwise known as marijuana. Rastas are vegetarians, and many of them believe that the white world is evil. Lastly, there's the Caribbean Pentecostalism, which is a more recent growth in the Caribbean. It's one of the most successful religious imports to the islands from the United States. It's associated with a Protestant revivalist sect from the United States known as Pentecostalism. A popular branch of Pentecostalism is the Assemblies of God. The emphasis is on the Holy Spirit, speaking in tongues, singing, healing, and spirit possession. The Bible is the final word in matters of faith. Charismatic leaders are important. Interestingly, Pentecostalism shares many features with African diaspora religions, even though it would not allow any syncretism with African diasporan religions, unlike Catholicism. So some of the aspects that, for example, Santeria and Pentecostalism might have in common is dancing, healing, clapping, spirit possession, emotional expressions, very vibrant bodily and emotional expressions. Some in religious studies we call this ecstatic devotion, or which comes from the Greek word ekstasis, actually two words, which means out of body. And so in a out of body trance-like state of dancing and healing, clapping, uh, this kind of exuberant worship is common to both Santeria and other forms of Afro-diasporan religions, as well as Pentecostalism. Speaking in tongues is an additional aspect of Pentecostalism. Sports is another important aspect of culture. And in the Caribbean islands, sports are very important, especially cricket and baseball. Baseball, of course, being an import from the United States. The Spanish Caribbean islands, perhaps because they're closer to the United States, Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic, are very attached to baseball. And a lot of famous baseball players in the United States have come from those islands. In the Anglo West Indies, such as Jamaica, Barbados, it's the game of cricket, which is an import from Great Britain. It's followed with a passion. It's a mass spectator sport providing heroes for the West Indian public and creating a sense of identity. Cricket was first introduced into the West Indies in Barbados, the island of Barbados, by British Army officers in the early 19th century. And that is all. So we thank you for your kind attention, and we hope that you have learned a lot about the Caribbean. This is the end of the official videos I'm posting on this that I'll be using in my course, but I may post a few more videos from a couple of the books on the Caribbean that I will not be giving assessments on. So thank you for your time and attention. I'll be posting some book reviews in the next few weeks. Thank you. Bye.